The job crisis is real. Every day, thousands of Pakistanis are losing jobs as the ongoing economic crisis deepens. Although it's hard to say exactly how many people will become jobless this year, but given the current pace of business closures, temporary shutdowns, and planned reductions in industries' outputs, around 6 million people across the country may remain unemployed. That's 8.5% of Pakistan's total workforce of 73 million. Another worrying aspect pointed out in Dawn's Business and Finance Weekly story by Mohyuddin Azam is that if the actual rate of unemployment turns out to be greater, the number of people who can take up job but cannot find one will be even higher. This comes as the government prepares to take tough decisions to stay in the IMF program. These tough decisions are increased gas and electricity prices, additional levy on petroleum products, withholding taxes on property, hiking sales tax on goods on import and wholesale stage. These steps will further fuel stagflation. World Bank says Pakistan's economy will grow just 2% during the current fiscal year ending in June. Job creation at such low levels of growth seems out of question, particularly when the global economic slowdown is bound to have spillover effects on Pakistan's domestic manufacturing and export sectors. For Pakistan, the presence of a sizable informal economy has always been a great support. But what happens when the economic growth falters, especially for a country facing multiple crises? We asked economist Haroon Sharif.
First of all, we need to recognize that Pakistan is officially or technically is in recession, economic recession. What economic recession is that when a continued period of very low growth for 6 months or more, and perhaps prolonging to a year or so. So when you are in recession, it's an extraordinary situation which needs to be tackled through extraordinary measures. Now, inflation, the way it is going up and the way rupee is sliding down, and Pakistan, which has a lot of dependence on imported inputs, including oil and milk and food products, the combined negativity of these both you have already seen large scale manufacturing going into negative. We have already seen people holding on to their investments. And then it is one of the major cross-cutting impact is the prolonged political uncertainty. In this situation, there has to be an impact, on the level of income, because inflation is a negative tax which cut down your consumption power. On top of that, if industries are closing down or shrinking or not expanding, so we have 2.5 million young people coming in the job market every year. With 2% growth and with these pressures which are unprecedented, I see a lot of unemployed youth, in the country with not adequate skills to get jobs outside the country. So one is the job market, which is going to be hit very strongly, and government needs to take social protection measures for that cohort. Second is the small entrepreneurs, the medium-sized entrepreneurs who do not have reserves, who do not have facilities of reaching out to the financial sector, and they import things and sell here, or import parts and do that. Their LCs are not being opened. They have been asked to put cash deposit. Dollars are not available. I see these companies going out of business as well. So it's a very painfully difficult time for Pakistan's economy to deal with, and then we can discuss the measures how other countries deal with such a situation. Government needs to cut down their own size and expenditure because their chronic problem of fiscal deficit is one of the root causes of what we are suffering. So please forget that government can create jobs. But what government can do is that they can sit down with industry leaders and try and come up with some kind of a protection scheme that we hope to revive the situation in a year's time. How do you sustain the low income families and people working for you? Government can give them subsidized credit through state bank to sustain the way they did it in COVID. But my worry is that those schemes only go to rich, upper elite businesses. It does not seep down. So we do not have mechanism to reach out to small and medium enterprises and the people who absorb job aspirants. So government needs to look at that angle, how to protect livelihoods of people and how to bring in some space where businesses don't really shrink very rapidly. अब उसके लिए they need to reach out to the industry leaders and come up with a strategy. Countries do 4-5 things while in recession. First of all, they immediately try and diversify the job opportunities. For instance, there are non-traditional sectors where people don't go. Education hai, health hai, post-flood recovery ke kaam hai, where donors can come in and put in money into that. So they need to start talking to both the people who are working with Pakistan, like in the Geneva Commitments and others, and some, food for work type program, so that some jobs are created for a year. But at the same time, in recession time, expenditure, you cannot continue living the way you live beyond means. So government needs to put some restrictions on the consumption of energy, usage of transportation, fuel-based transportation. Government needs to cut down their expenditure by 20% and pass it on to these vulnerable people. And the wasteful spending of making roads and flyovers and bridges should be halted immediately. It's an extraordinary time. And my advice to people is that don't put your savings in assets which you cannot sell very quickly, because you might be short of cash in the coming days and you would need emergency support. But if your money is stuck in assets because market is slow, land is not being sold or a house is not being sold, so you've got to stay liquid these days. These are few measures which countries do when they are in recession, but state needs to come up with a recovery strategy, not only the IMF program, which will stabilize the macroeconomic indicators, which are essential, but you need to have a job creating growth policy in consultation with sectors which can create jobs. In difficult times, actually, the informal economy helps Pakistan. I recall when we were under sanctions in 1998, it was the informal economy and the availability of liquidity in that economy. I would classify that it is not a gray or black economy. It is just the traditional, informal, unrecorded ways of doing transactions. And that economy kept on, the markets were, running, and, sales and purchase were happening. And that actually is a cushion to Pakistan for the time being. But the question is, if the fear of a looming, a recession multiplies and people don't see that, things are improving, then the informal money will start getting transferred into gold and dollars and assets, which they think can give them predictable return. So the money circulation, formal circulation is already shrinking because of high interest rate, but then the informal circulation will get converted from trade to assets. We have seen dollarization trend for years, and that is my worry, that unless the signal of hope goes that there are signs of revival and state is serious about it, the trust between policymakers and informal traders can further erode. There are 3-4 reactions which academia and research tells us. My information is that petty crime rate is already rising, particularly in urban and peri-urban areas. There is more purse snatching, there are more, stolen vehicles or bikes. There are, attempts on, banking system, ATM frauds are rampant. So I think those activities have already started. My worry is that it can get serious with the huge, Pakistan has a huge young population. If they get frustrated and don't see hope, so their tendencies toward radicalization, their tendencies towards getting bigger crimes or joining the gangs cannot be ruled out. And that is where I'm trying to say that is where state actors and ruling elite comes in to give a message of hope and have plans for that youth. In our, parliament, when I don't see many young people who can connect to the problems of youth. People who can, look at 25 years ahead as a policymaker. So we need to somehow reach out to that youth and tell them that they have a future here. Otherwise, I tend to agree with you that crime and getting into illegal activities and finding means like smuggling and others or drugs to make money will have a serious impact on the fabric of society. This is a time when government should spend 80 to 90% of their efforts on the things I'm saying, that dealing with recession and revival of economy. And they should be visibly seen to create space for people who have expertise to deal with these situations. Unfortunately, I see a very old school politics of power and patronage and populism. Still, they think that, this will be over. These things will not be over because Pakistan is not alone. There are almost 70 countries in the world facing recessionary and repressive pressures. So it's a very extraordinary situation in the world. Look at UK, look at Europe. The growth patterns are, going towards negativity. The hope is that the revival of global economy will come from China and India, which are our neighbors, and we need to think about ways how can we benefit from two large economies which are neighboring us.